Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to America's Finest Sports. Today, obviously we're going to be talking about the Chargers. Talked about the Chargers a little bit last week where we kind of brought up the different additions that they made, such as the guys that we're going to be talking about first, Khalil Mack, JC Jackson on the offensive side of the ball, Zion Johnson, making some also resigning Mike Williams, which is a pretty big deal considering the season he had last year. Yeah, he kind of fell off, but had himself a really solid season. Probably could have came down with a lot more touchdowns than he did considering the amount of red zone targets he had. But defensively, and very important to remember, Justin Herbert has had one of the worst defenses since he's become, our quarterback. Since he's been a starter, he's had one of the worst defenses across the whole league. I believe it's actually bottom 5 in the whole NFL. So despite having, last year having Derwin James and Joey Bosa, they struggled mightily still. And you saw that in the game against the Raiders and different games, even against the Texans, where, yeah, DJ did sit, but they still struggled mightily. You shouldn't struggle against a team like that. So what do? They add Khalil Mack and JC Jackson. Matt is a 49ers fan, but he's very excited to see that the Chargers got two players that he really likes. So Matt, what do you think about the Chargers adding both Khalil Mack and JC Jackson to their defense?
Yeah, so I thought this would be a fun topic for us to talk about just because I might not know as much on the Chargers, but in terms of Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, those are a couple guys that I've really watched throughout the league over the last couple years. Now, J.C. Jackson has kind of come on this scene a lot more recent than Khalil Mack, so I'll talk a little bit about Khalil Mack beforehand, just because I think when you talk about some of the Chargers' struggles, I mean, you brought up that you got a high powered offense with Justin Herbert at the helm. And then last year you had a defense that was, I'd say, pitiful at times because
Oh, yeah.
the big thing was on third down, they were the worst defense on third down. They could not get teams off the field, and it absolutely burned them. And so when I think about this Khalil Mack addition, dude, you're getting a guy that is a really, really elite pass rusher. But not only that, but he's an excellent run defender. And so you kind of look at what the Chargers are trying to do. They're trying to convert their defense into a defense that can actually hang and get off the field on third downs, right? Well, what do? You bring a guy in that will absolutely seal the edge, probably better than any other D end in the league. And he's also going to have a huge value in terms of a pass rusher. Sorry about the fire truck or ambulance. I don't know what it is. But also, we look at this team and you go, okay, if you're getting to the quarterback quicker, that's a huge plus on third down. But also, what I would notice when I was watching Charger games is a lot of those probably 3rd and 4 or less felt like gimmies for the opposing offenses to just
Oh,
hand the ball up, run up the
uh-huh.
middle, run a little stretch play. You're not going to be able to run a stretch play if Khalil Mack's on one of those sides. And you have Joey Bosa on the other side. Okay, that means that you're going to be forced to go up the middle. You have another defensive addition there. So, and that's that guy being Sebastian Joseph Day. So, like, I think it's great what they did to the D line because it felt like they couldn't stop the run, especially on third down. And I think all of a sudden that's going to be a huge piece of this defense that's going to change a lot. I can talk about JC Jackson right now too, or you would rather go and talk about a little bit more Khalil Mack before we get into him?
Oh man, what's there to say about Khalil Mack? Absolutely one of the best pass rushers in football. Where you see the last year, Joey Bosa was by himself pretty much the whole time. Yeah, Uchenna and Wilson had his moments, but for the most part, it was Joey Bosa trying to create pressure by himself. And when Joey Bosa was at his best, was when him and Melvin Ingram were wreaking havoc and being one of the best duos in football. So it's really good to see Joey Bosa get another running mate because it's been really hard watching him get double, triple teamed at times because the other guys could not force pressure. I mean, I'm looking at the depth chart. Jerry Tillery has been a bust, like no ands, ifs, or buts. He's been a bust. But one of the bigger pickups, absolutely Sebastian Joseph Day. So I'm really hoping that with these, and I mean, there's also Kyle Van Noy, there's Bryce Callahan. I'm hoping with some additions to the front seven, they're going to finally be able to stop the run because it seems like year in and year out, it's the Chargers have been one of the worst teams against the run. It's year in and year out. It happens every year. So hopefully with these additions to the front seven, they'll be able to finally stop the run. But yeah, I don't really feel like there's much to say about Khalil Mack. I believe in like 7 games last year, he had 6.5 sacks, something like that. Still at this age, he's creating pressure, and now he's got someone to be able to help him on the other side again. So it's going to be huge to have both of those guys on the same team, on the same D line. But yeah, we can talk about J.C. Jackson now, who I believe has 17 interceptions. I believe he's in the past 2 years. Last year with 8, I believe the year before with 9. and I think he either leads the league or he's among the top 3, top 5 since, in that time span. So that's also going to be big, creating pressure on the quarterback to be able to get J.C. Jackson those 5+ interceptions yet again. J.C. Jackson coming from the New England system, and I know a lot of people who do acquire, a lot of fans when they see their team acquire New England players, like, oh, he's just a Bill Belichick guy, where he excelled because of Bill Belichick and his crazy schemes and everything like that. I don't feel like J.C. Jackson is going to be that way. I think Brandon Staley, now that he has more to work with, is going to be able to actually provide a good defense the way he did with the Rams. I don't know if he provided that, but the way he had a good defense with the Rams, I'm hoping more of that will come to LA, to the other side of LA, the other team in LA. I guess I shouldn't say other side; they play in the same stadium. Other team in LA. So I'm hoping with these additions they'll finally be able to create more turnovers, because I don't know where they ranked in turnovers last year, but I know it wasn't. I don't think it was any higher than 20. So, being able to get the ball back in Justin Herbert's hands is going to rely heavily on J.C. Jackson. So, what do you think, J.C. Jackson?
Yeah, so I like that you bring up kind of like being like the main Belichick corner, because in what 2020, yeah, 2020 was that first year where J.C. Jackson kind of came on the scene. Everyone was like, okay, this guy's a good player. Like, he's a real good corner. Now, for part of that season, he was playing with Stephon Gilmore, or part of the last couple two years he's been playing with Stephon Gilmore, but Gilmore's been banged up once in a while. So he's been the number one corner at times. At other times, he's been the number two corner. But he's a guy like he's been really good and just really underrated for a while. And then you started to see him become that true number one, where it almost like for Belichick, like he's scheming teams to throw to him. He wants them to throw to him. He wants them to run the weird coverages where he runs like half man, half zone coverages. Belichick's a genius. So it gets a lot easier, I guess, to make some of to capitalize on the mistakes that quarterbacks make against those defenses. But in terms of JC as the player, in terms of bringing him in, I think it's a great move. You also brought up, and I know we're not going to talk about him as in depth, but Bryce Callahan, another great corner there. So you go and you add 2 high caliber corners. But JC Jackson, the craziest thing to me is that he's only making $16.5 million
Mm-hmm.
average per year. And when he was getting talked about like early free agency, like maybe like the couple days before it actually started, people were tossing out like, oh, he's going to get 20 to 25. And then all of a
Yep.
sudden he gets way less, which I thought was really interesting. But I like the move a lot. I was also looking into his contract a little bit before. It's only like truly a 3-year deal. So for a lot of corner contracts, like it's like a little bit like running back, where like guys will just all of a sudden athleticism's gone and they're not great players anymore. If that does happen, the Chargers aren't going to be like screwed or anything like that. So they do have an out after his age 29 season. So that's good. But you're getting a legit cornerback one in his prime, and you're getting him at $16.5 million a year. This year, he's only has an $8 million cap hit. That's kind of ridiculous, honestly. But I love the addition to the Chargers for the Chargers defense. I'm assuming, is Asante Samuel going to play nickel and then Bryce Callahan's going to play outside?
Seems like Asante Samuel's going to play outside. Bryce Callahan's going to kick into the slot. But let's say Michael Davis were to come on the field somehow. I mean, I truly don't think he's that good. He's pretty inconsistent. I think at times, like, yeah, he does look like a pretty damn good corner, but other times he's getting cooked. But when he is on the field, he would probably slide into the other outside corner, and you'd probably see ASJ or Callahan slide into that slot.
That's good though, because like Michael Davis as your fourth corner, like your guy off the bench. And sometimes, if you depending what packages you're in, like if you're in like a dime package or something, and you have an extra corner on the field, then yeah, you can bring him on. But like that's pretty nice to have a fourth
Yeah.
corner like that. For my 49ers last year, they did not have good cornerback depth, and then they had a couple injuries early on in the year, and then all of a sudden, oh, like you got to kind of panic because
Yeah.
they're throwing out terrible corners.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I feel like for especially in the NFL nowadays, like a lot of corners are going to get beat all the time, even if they're high end guys. But when you're not throwing out like a real starting caliber corner, like a borderline starter, and they're like a bad corner, the opposing offenses are just going to look that way and just absolutely rip apart that side.
Mhm.
So having depth there is a big deal. So I like that you have Michael Davis as your fourth corner. It is interesting though that I know that Bryce Callahan's played mostly in the nickel, but I thought that he would move outside just because Asante Samuel Jr. is
Asante,
pretty
he's
small.
smaller. Yeah, he's smaller. he was able to hang last year with some of the guys that, like the Mike. I mean, I don't know if he hung with Mike Evans, but I know he hung with like the Chiefs receivers and everything like that. He definitely was a noticeable player when he was playing. He was very good last year. Just dealt with some concussions, so hopefully he's able to come out and be the outside corner that he looked like last year. Because you're right. He's small. Um, there was another small guy that played for the Chargers, and Jason Verrett. He was pretty stocky, but he was small, and obviously we saw that when the dude was made of glass. But I think ASJ is going to be a little different. So, um, yeah, that's what the corner depth looks like. Then you got, I mean, the rest of the depth chart on defense looks good, man. I mean, I hope I don't have to see too much Jerry Tillery, but signed Austin Johnson also was kind of a sleeper in the Padres in the Chargers defense. Yeah, we talk a lot of Padres, but I mean, then you got linebackers Kenneth Murray Jr. who you're kind of expecting sort of a rebound from. He was, I think, horrific is kind of an understatement because he was really bad last year. So, I mean, really hoping that he's able to get to that 100 plus tackles that he had in his rookie year. I mean, I don't make a big deal out of tackles, but um, it's a lot more than his second year. But yeah,
Yeah, probably, and he'll get to like kind of like flash the sideline to sideline speed a little bit more, just like
yeah,
because they
yeah.
have a better D line. I feel like.
Yeah, and he flashed out a lot at Oklahoma, man. He was really good over there, and it was kind of shocking to see his fall off last year. But we're hoping for a rebound for him for sure because he was somewhat of a fan favorite coming into last year. Drew Tranquil, solid, signed solid depth. Troy Reader, but it's looking like a really solid defense for this team. I mean, needed it after failing to make the playoffs last year, where you saw Justin Herbert put up almost an MVP caliber season.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like a lot of the stuff that you're bringing up too, like the depth and stuff, like that's where you kind of felt it with the Chargers, where like guys are getting gassed, they're not really able to rotate as well. Um, I don't know. I think that's it. I think that when you're looking at a lot of defenses, like that's what you really need. And you have picked up Troy Reader, like that's a solid backup linebacker. That's like really good. Because he was solid on the Rams for quite a few years. So I definitely like a lot of the moves that they have. A lot of depth with their depth chart here. And anytime you have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, I guess the big thing is still going to be health, but it is nice to know like if a couple of these guys are banged up for a few games because that's inevitably going to happen in the NFL. Like you're going to miss a few games. As long as they avoid major injuries, like this is a defense that can help. It can be a big part of making a run. So I love the additions on the defensive side of the ball. I think it was a good offseason. And anytime you can snag a cornerback one in an open market for $16.5 million, and then trade a second rounder, dude. I didn't say when we were talking about Khalil Mack, but the fact that Khalil Mack was traded for a second rounder still blows my mind. And I get it's because of the money, right? It's because of this, but dude, he's still good. And people have decided that like he's like washed or something. I don't see it. He's been hurt, but washed, it seems kind of absurd to me. So
Yeah,
I'm pumped for you guys because
yeah, man.
Charger games last year, like defensively, they're kind of
They
rough.
were horrible. They were horrible defensively, and it made for a really good offensive showing. You would see some fireworks from Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, but you kind of expect fireworks from them. Josh Palmer is not getting talked about enough. Josh Palmer is going to be really solid for the Chargers this year. Maybe not like in 1,000 yards, 8+ touchdown guy, but he kind of flourished towards the back end of last season, and I think he's going to have a solid showing this year. But yeah, the Chargers offense, I expect them to have fireworks, but this defense is going to be very integral in getting the Chargers to the point that they want to be. Last year, that offense was a playoff offense. That's a very high powered offense, but that defense is like a Giants, type defense. It's like really bad. It doesn't help. But yeah, I mean, I think what's up next for us to talk about? I kind of forgot.
Think running back sleepers, yeah. Switch gears
Running back
to fantasy
sleeper.
football a
Let's
little
talk
bit.
about some fantasy football. We kind of talked about it recently, not recently, but a little while back, and we talked about sleepers. And I said, I don't even know if this is considered a sleeper, but I said AJ Dillon. I said AJ Dillon because I mean I need to look up his age really quick. Hold on, not AJ Dillon's.
He's
Aaron Jones's.
Aaron Jones, I think is 27 or 28. Dylan's what 23 or 24, I want to say.
Yeah.
It's funny. So you bring up Dylan. One of my sleepers is definitely Aaron Jones, and he's rated like 11th. But dude, I like this because this is interesting. That offense does not have good receivers. Now they have Aaron Rodgers. AJ Dillon is going to be the primary like between the tackles guy, but Aaron Jones as a gadget piece is so intriguing to me. And like I was thinking about it because you look around the league and like in terms of talent, I don't know if they're the most talented backfield. I mean, I know they're not. That's definitely the Browns. It's not even like a discussion. But is there a better like pair of running backs that fit together? Just like, oh, we're gonna have AJ Dillon and then we're gonna have Aaron Jones. Like it's like a clear like in between the tackles, downhill, powerful runner, and then like your like gadget, not really a scat back because he's a good runner, but just like a weapon. It feels like out of the backfield. Like I love it, dude. I think they're both valuable. I really do.
Yeah, they're both going to be very valuable. I'm going to try and get myself a share of Aaron Jones for sure. But I say AJ Dillon because, like you mentioned, he's going to be that the in between the tackles kind of guy. I expect him to get a lot of touchdowns, and there's obviously going to be a lot more high value touches with Devontae Adams leaving 150, 160 plus targets. They're I mean, they're gone. All of those targets are up for grabs. And I would expect a lot of those they're going to be spread out between Alan Lazard, Christian Watson, Aaron Jones. They're going to be spread out for sure, with the majority, I would assume, going to Alan Lazard. But Aaron Jones is going to get a lot of those. And I think that's kind of what gives him that second round, low end, first round appeal, is because he's going to get a lot of targets. And historically, without Devontae Adams, he puts up some pretty good numbers. So now I talk about AJ Dillon because we know that the running back age threshold is like 26, maybe 27, pushing 27. Injuries might start to kick in. If Aaron Jones were to get injured, the upside that AJ Dillon already has skyrockets up to a potential top 5, top 10 running back week in, week out. That's my opinion. And I think you can kind of get him at a good price. With that being said, I will be trying to get myself some Aaron Jones because he is going to get some solid targets. And I really do believe he only needs 15 to 18 touches to be an efficient running back. Where last year you kind of saw AJ Dillon was taking a lot of touches from him. I don't think it's going to be like, yeah, he's going to take touches from him, but not in the sense that, okay, it's going to be, the show is going to be AJ Dillon, Devontae Adams most of the time. Now it's going to have to run through that backfield. I think both of them are going to be very valuable running backs. I like them both. I'm going to try for Aaron Jones, but I would absolutely not mind getting AJ Dillon at a cheaper price. And I believe he does have a lot of upside.
Yeah, dude, I like that a lot. And also, so I think I'm looking at Fantasy Pros. So right now, Aaron Jones is ranked 11th and AJ Dillon's ranked 25th. So that's pretty good. Like that's value to be had. I think I'm echoing a little bit in your mic, Isaac, by the way.
Yeah, let me go. I'm turned down a little bit.
Yeah, but a couple other guys, and I don't know. I know that's been like the main guy that you've had your eyes on. I want to say at least. But a couple other guys that I'm just looking through the rankings right here, and a few guys that stand out. Kareem Hunt's really intriguing because he's going late, but it is a huge risk. It is like a big what's it called, like high risk, high reward kind of guy, right? If you go and you get him, it could be a great move. Now, he could also hold out or he could also stay a Brown. But if he is a starter somewhere else, dude, Kareem Hunt is a top 10 back in talent in the NFL, most likely right now, still. I think a lot of people forget what it looked like when he led his backfield, but he's currently going 30th off the board. And I don't know. What do you think about like you gonna take a little bit of Kareem Hunt, or is it too risky for you?
Get off me. It seems like, oh wait, okay, I'm good. Cool. No, I don't think it's a risk at all. It seems like year in, year out, he's kind of that running back 20 to running back 30 in terms of where you drafted him. He's consistently finishing as a running back 2, whether it's mid running back 2 or a low end running back 2. He's finishing around there. He's getting his targets. He was going to be a lot more valuable with Deshaun Watson under center, and that's probably going to go out the window. I don't see Deshaun Watson playing more than 8 to 10 games, but I really don't see him playing at all this season. He was going to be a lot more valuable Deshaun Watson under center. Even with Deshaun Watson under center, or even without him, I still think he's going to finish as a low end running back 2. So drafting him as a running back 30, I think there's a lot of value to be had there. Whether I don't see him finishing lower than like running back 22, 24 range. And if you're drafting him at running back 30 or wherever he is, you're getting 6+6 value. So I think that's a good value to be had. I was just looking right now. There was someone I just had my eye on. It's gonna sound weird because he's been a bust these past 2 seasons. I don't know if Matt knows where I'm going with this, but I'm going with Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, I'm going back to the well. I'm going back to the well because they didn't add run. I don't believe they added running backs, and if they did, it was some bum in like the 6th lower round, something like that. Um, Miles Sanders is going to get the touches. He's going to get the touches. Last year, I don't know how many touches he had, but it was way too many to not finish with at least 6 touchdowns. There's no way he does not score a touchdown again this year. If he finishes with 6+, he probably finishes a lot higher than where he did last year. But he was averaging 5+ yards per carry, is back with one of the top offensive lines in football, now has AJ Brown to take away defense's attention from him. I could truly see this being like a running back 2 type finish for Miles Sanders. And I don't know if that's where you're drafting him. I'll check right now. Right now, you're drafting him around the running back 27 range. So in a 12-man league, if he's finishing top 24, you're getting a running back 2, and you're drafting him as a high-end running back 3. So I do think there's value to be had. When you look at the yards per carry, it does not translate to, oh man, this guy's going to get 0 touchdowns again. It translates to this guy's probably going to get 6 to 8+ touchdowns if they're finally willing to give him those red zone touches, because last year those red zone touches were going to Jalen Hurts. I don't really see that happening again. I hope they want to keep Jalen Hurts as healthy as possible. But Miles Sanders should be able to get some touches. Ricky H just said it. It's all about staying healthy. It is definitely all about staying healthy. He's had some health issues in the past where he's missed, minimum 3-4 games these past 2 years, I believe. But if he stays healthy, if he keeps up that yards per carry, I do see him being a solid value this year.
I kind of like that one, and I wouldn't have gone there just because I don't think I've ever drafted Miles Sanders in any league I've played in.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but no, it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of times when we look back on that Titans offense, the guy that gets all the credit is Derrick Henry, right? We also got to realize that if you're a linebacker and AJ Brown is running a slant route, it's really hard. You're in no man's land of, do I take a step back and they're going to hit this slant and he's going to take it for 60 yards? Or do I step forward and kind of get a beat on Derrick Henry? Because they run a lot of like RPO type things, like options where Ryan Tannehill is actually something that actually Ryan Tannehill is really good at. But you're going to see a ton of that in Philly this year. And that's why I think that AJ Brown move is so big. But it's fair to bring up that a guy that could see a bunch of dividends from that is definitely Miles Sanders, because he's a good back. He's a good back. And you're right. Like, they didn't really draft to like add too much anyone really like significant in the running back room. Kenneth Gainwell is probably still going to be like that scat back for them. So if they're able to run the ball well, which they absolutely should be able to do, I think that'll help a lot. And you're not going to be able to stack the box as much against him now because of the addition of AJ Brown. So I think a lot of it still is going to come down to, can Jalen Hurts like hit those big shots down the field? Because if he's able to do that with Devontae Smith as well, like, you have a nasty offense. So that's really where it's going to come down to, I think. But that's definitely a guy to bring up. I had a couple other backs that I think are interesting, younger guys. So Isaiah Spiller, I think Ace said something in the chat. Yeah, Ace said Isaiah Spiller breakout rookie season, just watch. Dude, I love it, man. I think that Isaiah Spiller is a sweet back to go after, just because everyone's going and they're drafting Austin Eckler top 5, top 10 in fantasy drafts, right? Well, Isaiah Spiller is going to take a decent chunk of his carries. Like, I think you have to fully expect that. He's been getting a lot of praise in camp. He's part of an offense that's really good. Now, I know that the Chargers still don't have the best offensive line, but they have improved the offensive line as well. So I like Spiller a lot. I think a big thing for the Chargers season is going to be keeping Eckler healthy, and Spiller could be a real clutch guy there. And then I'll let you get into him in just a second, but a couple other guys I did want to bring up were Zamir White for the Raiders. A lot of weird stuff going on with Josh Jacobs. It's like they're apparently not shopping him, but it kind of sounds like they are. He looked pretty good in the Hall of Fame game, so he's a guy that's a little bit interesting. He's going running back 61 off the board, so this is no capital. And, of course, I'm going to toss in a 49er, Trey Sermon. You could probably just get him off waivers, but Trey Sermon is a fun back because he's super talented, and, you're getting him for, like, literally, like, potentially, like, your last pick. But I think there was maybe one other guy I had, but what do you think about those couple guys right there?
I like the Isaiah Spiller one because Austin Eckler himself basically said, look, bro, Someone help me. Please. Someone get me off the field for a little bit. Because he knows he's not the type of back that's going to be able to take 25 plus carries, 25 plus touches a game. He can't do that. He's not big enough to be able to handle that kind of workload. And he is still a very efficient back, being able to get those 16 to 20 touches a game, with 8 of those coming out of the backfield being targets. He's still a very valuable back in that sense, and that's why he's such a valuable fantasy back. Unless you play standard, he's still valuable, but you're really drafting Austin Eckler because he gets a lot of those targets. But who's going to take away the carries that he's not getting? That's probably going to be Isaiah Spiller because Joshua Kelly sucks. I forgot who the other back is. But Isaiah Spiller should be able to take quite a bit of carries. So he's definitely an exciting guy. You're drafting him at around, let me see, 40, running back 44. Almost no draft capital. You're going to get him for, 12th or later round. In our draft, we do auction. Probably going to get him for like $1 or off the free agent market, So he's an exciting guy to look at. It was weird seeing that Josh Jacobs kind of got a decent amount of action in that Hall of Fame game, just because who the hell plays in the Hall of Fame game? Like, if you're a no-name, normally you're playing in the Hall of Fame game, but Josh Jacobs is no-name. He isn't very good, but he's no-name. So it was strange to see him playing in that game. Who's the other guy you said?
Trey Sermon. He played
Trey Sermon. Yeah,
played at Ohio State for a little bit, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I remember him for sure.
He's a nasty route runner.
Yeah.
I hope it works out, dude. The problem is that he just didn't get any playing time last year. So, another guy you spend no draft capital on. And also, I did remember the other guy I was going to bring up, Dameon Pierce. He's a running back. He's a fourth rounder for the Texans out of Florida. Mm-hmm. He's probably going to be their starter. Yes, the Texans suck, but dude, if you can get a starter at running back 45, like a pretty clear 1A, dude, that's value. That's worth it right there. So
100%.
I like that, and he was good at Florida too. So
yeah, I was going to say about Trey Sermon. The Niners seem to always have a new back kind of every year. So I mean, definitely got to keep an eye on. I mean, I like Elijah Mitchell, but I don't know. It's the Niners. We know how that could be with running backs. They kind of, rotate in and out. But you want to talk about some wide receivers that you think are some sleepers?
Yeah, let's get into it. Wide receiver is a little bit deeper than running back, because for running back, it's a lot more of all right, let's go find some guys that are, rookies and young players, or just some guys that are kind of forgotten about. But there's a bunch of wide receivers that I like. Are there any guys that you want to start with? There's one guy that I know is my clear, if you don't draft him, you're fucking up. But that's I can start with him if you want.
I already know who it is, so go for it.
Oh yeah. So Mr. Brandon Ayuk. So Mr. Brandon Ayuk, I thought he was going to have his big come out year last year, ball out. Unfortunately, Deebo Samuel put up an offensive player of the year caliber season. And Brandon Ayuk didn't really play much for the beginning part of the year, a legitimate sophomore slump. However, if you've been paying any attention to 49ers news recently, what you would know is that Trey Lance is 100% going to be the starter coming into the season, and he has a very obvious favorite target and a very obvious guy that he's been working with all season. That guy is Brandon Ayuk. If you also have been following the Niners for a decent amount of time, you would know that last season, Deebo Samuel was getting a ton of hype throughout training camp. And the guys that are talking about it typically are the Fred Warners, the George Kittles, the Nick Bosas, the high-end caliber players on the Niners. Brandon Ayuk is getting all of that hype this offseason. I got to look at where he's going. I believe he's going wide receiver 36 right now, which is basically lower than what he finished at last year when he wasn't getting playing time for the first 6 games of the season. It is a very obvious thing to go and snag Brandon Ayuk, because he's thought of as a not that great wide third option on the team, but he's legitimately going to lead the 49ers in targets next year. That is something I'm very confident in, and if he doesn't lead them, he's going to be really close behind. George Kittle, when Trey Lance has been playing, hasn't been involved that much in the passing game, and Deebo Samuel's used a little bit more as the gadget piece and used a little bit more deep downfield, where most of the volume in the passing game is going to Brandon Ayuk. That's what it looked like last year. That's basically what all of the reports from training camp are saying. So if Brandon Ayuk is available, snag him, because at worst he's going to be a wide receiver 2 next year, and you're drafting him at like wide receiver 4 value. It's absurd. So like late wide or bottom wide receiver 3, or like high wide receiver 4. So literally get all your as much Brandon Ayuk as you can possibly get. I think it's 100% worth it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's been the talk of the 49ers camp as far as wide receivers go. He's been the most hyped up guy. And Debo Samuel kind of just signed this fat contract. So you kind of, I mean, you kind of expect his usage to still be up there. But I saw something today, like in the last 10 weeks of the season, he only had like, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe 50 catches for 500 something yards. A lot of his production came from running the ball, running the football. That's where a lot of his production came from the last 10 weeks of the season. So those targets that are open are going to go to Brandon Ayuk because he's been pretty solid, and Trey Lance has been working a lot with him. Trey Lance has been working a lot with him. That's been his favorite target. So absolutely, Brandon Ayuk at that range of where he's being drafted is definitely a solid value. You're getting maybe a high end wide receiver 3, low end wide receiver 2 with upside at that price. I think that's a really solid price to draft him. But I mean, I look at these wide receiver rankings and I see value in kind of a lot of guys. Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 20, I do think he'll probably finish around the wide receiver 17, 20 range. But that's as safe as it gets when it comes to, wide receivers. Because, yeah, Mills isn't very good, but he actually didn't look very bad last year. Like, he's a serviceable quarterback, and he was kind of feeding Brandon Cooks the ball. Brandon Cooks looked pretty solid for most of the season last year, so that's a value for sure. Then you go ahead and you look at I'm looking at Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver 25. I think a lot of the hype is surrounding Cortland Sutton. I mean, rightly so. That's a pretty damn solid wide receiver. But a lot of the targets that Cortland Sutton was getting while Jerry Jeudy was gone went back to Jerry Jeudy when he came back. I really do think the Broncos want to try making Jerry Jeudy a focal point of the offense. Remember last year it was in that Rams offense, it was Robert Woods getting a lot of the talk. Robert Woods is getting a lot of the talk as, oh, this guy's going to sprout up to low end wide receiver 1. Yeah, Cooper Kupp was getting some talk, but not as much. Robert Woods, while he was healthy, was not very good. Not a very good fantasy football wide receiver. Cooper Kupp was number 1 all year, outscoring the next guy by 100 points. I kind of feel like like one of those, like I think Jerry Jeudy's going to have himself a really solid season. Struggled with drops last year, but having Russell Wilson at the helm this year, Tim Patrick, I'm pretty sure he's going to be out for the year. And I kind of thought, okay, if there's one person that's kind of going to be a thorn in Jerry Jeudy's side, it would be Tim Patrick. Now he's gone. KJ Hamler's a good receiver, but he's probably going to operate, I mean, now they're all going to get their targets, I think. So Jerry Jeudy's kind of a guy, wide receiver 25, that I truly do think could finish as a low-end wide receiver 1 because Russell Wilson has sported 2 wide receiver 1s before and a number 1 running back. Not number 1, but a running back 1 in Chris Carson when he was finishing, around the running back 9 to running back 12 range. So I do think Jerry Jeudy's a pretty solid value at running back 25. You could say the same for Cortland Sutton at wide receiver 19. Last guy I want to talk about, not last, but before we come back around, I don't want to take them all from you. I don't know who you got. I don't know. This might be a guy that you got. Michael Thomas going at wide receiver 30 is kind of absurd. That's one of your guys you could talk. Yeah, I'm sure you want to talk about him too. Going at wide receiver 30, man, you're getting a guy that finished as a wide receiver 1 with, yes, Jameis Winston just got injured in camp, but the Saints don't really think it's that significant. So I fully expect him to be ready by the time the season comes around. Jameis Winston has sported 2 wide receiver 1s also in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in their last season. Now he gets Michael Thomas. Chris Olave is going to get his. Jarvis Landry, I'm not a big Jarvis Landry fan. Alvin Kamara, when he plays, is going to get his. Alvin Kamara might miss a few games. But Michael Thomas going as wide receiver 30 is stupid. I mean, it's stupid. He's going to be probably a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 if he's able to play all these games. And yeah, it's going to take him a little bit of time to find the amazing route running ability that he had, because his ankle was a high ankle sprain. He was out for a really long time. But this is a guy that formerly finished as a wide receiver 1, had 2 or 3 straight top 5, top 10 finishes. And you can probably bank on him being able to heavily outperform that wide receiver 30 ADP.
Dude, yeah, and there is a lot of risk with him too, just because like he's missed the last 2 seasons, so that's where the risk is. But I mean, I like Michael Thomas. I mean, anytime you're getting a guy that I think he finished as wide receiver 1 back-to-back years, I want to say. Maybe it was maybe that's only in PPR also because he had like
Mhm.
the one year we had like the ridiculous amount of targets. But I like Michael Thomas. Another guy I actually like a lot, and I will say right now, I think he is going to be the number 1 rookie wide receiver is Chris Olave. Chris Olave goes in like the 40s or the 50s. Dude, Chris Olave was sweet. He's one of those guys that comes out as a wideout, doesn't have overwhelming physical traits, so he's probably not gonna ever be like a Jamar Chase kind of guy that just overwhelms you with how physically dominant he is, or a Mike Evans or a Drake London, right? But he's a guy you brought up Brandon Cooks, different player, but kind of reminds me of he has a knack for getting open, and he's going to be able to continue to do that. So I like Chris Olave a lot, dude. You can go with MT as well. MT goes a little bit earlier, so kind of pick your poison with one of those guys, or you could rock with both even. I mean, if Jameis Winston looks good, and he looked pretty good last year with no wide receivers, with a horrible wide receiver room. But I definitely like going after the Saints wideouts. So I have a few other guys I have listed here. So I have kind of 2 groups. I have like a veteran group of sleepers and like a rookie to second year group. Now I did bring up Brandon Ayuk. I also brought up Olave as a rookie. The other younger players I have that I think should definitely be targeted are Kadarius Toney,
Good one.
Rashad Bateman,
Good
and
one.
KJ Hamler. So you brought up the Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy side of it. If KJ Hamler is healthy and on the field, KJ Hamler is the Tyler Lockett in that offense, in my opinion. Now, I think they're going to run a lot more 3 wide receiver sets than you would see in the Russell Wilson offenses in Seattle. But KJ Hamler is a sweet player. He's a very, very good downfield threat. That is Russell Wilson's biggest strength. So if that offense is ticking and you also have basically the third corner on KJ Hamler all the time, he's going to have some big time games. Now, the big thing for him is if he comes back healthy from his ACL injury. But another guy, like when we were bringing up the Trey Sermon kind of group of people, you're getting him like last round or you're getting him off the waivers. Just got to monitor, I think. In terms of Rashad Bateman is very clearly the best wide receiver in Baltimore, and all of the camp reports are that he's a stud. Now, Baltimore also has a tight end that they drafted, Isaiah Likely, who's looked really good in camp as well. So Baltimore is going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets. But what that means is there's going to basically be either James Prochet or, oh my God, I'm forgetting, Devin Duvernay on one side, and then you're going to have Rashad Bateman on the other. Rashad Bateman is a nasty wideout. He was hurt last year. If he would have been healthy, and if not Russell Wilson, if Lamar Jackson would have been healthy, and you had Hollywood there too, that would have been a ridiculous amount of weapons for Lamar to work with. But unfortunately, he was banged up, and then he was pretty much playing when I think he played like 1 or 2 games with Lamar, so we didn't really get to see him. Ridiculously talented, and people don't really talk about him that much in fantasy circles. Now he started to climb up the rankings, but definitely a stud to go after there. Kadarius Toney, you're kind of hoping that Daniel Jones and they all figure it out in for the Giants, but his thing is that he's been hurt a lot. Kind of a you're throwing a dart, you're trying to land a star, but he was sweet in college. He does not get touched. He's one of those guys that he looks like a kick returner when he has the ball, like even if like on little screens and stuff like that. So if the Giants are able to get the ball in his hands, he could be like maybe not this year, but he could be a wide receiver 1 in the future. Like he is that talented, but it's going to come down to what does that team look like, and if he's healthy. And then the other couple guys I had, you brought up MT. That was one of the vets I wanted to bring up.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
the other 3 vets I have are Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen gets slept on every single year. He's a wide
Yeah.
receiver 1 if he's on the field. Like if he's like not last year because he got banged up for a little bit, still finished as a wide receiver 2. And then the 2 years before that, he was a wide receiver 1. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how much more consistency do you need? He's only, I think, 31 or 32 also. Another guy, Michael Gallup, he goes like 50. Michael Gallup's the wide receiver 2 in Dallas. That's a sweet spot to be in. Now, he's probably not going to play at the beginning of the year, so you're probably going to miss like a month of him, but stashing him in your IR spot or whatever is 100% worth it. And then Lazard for the Packers is probably going
Right.
to be their number 1 receiving weapon, maybe like outside like Aaron Jones. So those are the vets and the rookies I like, but kind of a fat list. But dude, you can just wait on wide receiver and get
Yeah,
a bunch of good guys later on. I think it's you don't even need to draft them early. Get running back early and go get all these sleeper wide receivers later on in your drafts.
completely agree. I mean, Alan Lazard is bound to, have himself a low end wide receiver two type season. I think that's going to be someone that you're going to be able to plug into your flex spot or just, have a reliable guy on the bench. He's going to get so many targets. Aaron Rodgers has already talked him up a little bit in camp. So that's going to be an interesting guy to keep an eye on. I think another guy that I kind of wanted to talk about, and it's very risky. I'm like not even like super sold on him because it's very tough to gauge. Gabriel Davis might be that third year wide receiver that breaks out. I mean, it happens almost every year where that third year wide receiver just happens to take, a massive leap. I think the only person they added was Jamison Crowder, I want to say, who, gets his targets. He's a slot guy, not going to go deep very often. I don't know if they got anyone else, but, Sanders is out of there. Cole Beasley out of there, the guys that took a lot of targets in general. But of course, nonetheless, Stephon Diggs is still there. But Josh Allen's the type of quarterback that's going to be able to spot two wide receiver ones. And I think Gabriel Davis has potential to be a high end wide receiver two or a mid wide receiver two. But he's going right before Michael Thomas. And he's going as the wide receiver 29, where I think you're absolutely going to get value from him. Past 2 years, 62 targets his first year, 63 targets the next. I think everyone's going to remember the game where he went for 201 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's kind of what's getting him talked about this year. But the talent that we saw in that game is not, it's not going to go unnoticed. He cooked someone. I forgot who it was, but he left them on the floor on their back after breaking their ankles. He's a solid route runner. He's fun to watch. And he's going to be that guy that I think can take a massive year and massive leap in their third year where, he'll be like an 1,100 yard, 1,200 yard type guy with hopefully double digit touchdowns, if not 8+ touchdowns. But that's a guy to certainly keep your eye on throughout training camp. Keep an eye on what they're saying about him. And he's going to garner himself hopefully 110, 120 plus targets. And he's clearly shown the ability to be like a breakaway type player, a deep threat in a sense. But that's a guy to certainly keep your eye on because he could be super fun to have on your team at a really good price.
Yeah, I like him too, and I think the only thing is that he does get like kind of driven up the boards because of the
Because of that
playoff, the
game, yeah,
ridiculous
because of
playoff
that
game.
game.
But you brought up anyone that they added. They also added OJ Howard, but
Okay.
I mean a much different mold of a player, more of like trying to kind of like replace Cole Beasley, and they did that with Crowder too. So like some more underneath guys, but OJ Howard is a pretty good player. He kind of gets a little bit underrated too, especially when the Bucks brought in Gronk. That kind of hurt him a lot because Gronk did end up having a lot left in the tank in Tampa. But
Yeah.
I like Gabriel Davis. It's also great too because like you look at Gabriel Davis's skill sets, like, oh, what does he do? He's nasty in man coverage and he takes the top off the defense. Yeah, you have a guy in Josh Allen who has an absolute hose. So like he's gonna have some big play performances. I don't play best ball fantasy, but if people play best ball fantasy, that's probably a guy to have because like
Definitely.
you just have him sitting there. Oh, look at that 50-point game! Like look at that 200-yard 4 tutty game. So I like that one too. That's a solid player as well.
Yeah. I don't really have anyone else. I mean, we're gonna do quite a few of these before the season starts. I think our draft's probably gonna be held around the 27th or so. Maybe we'll find a way to, show you guys that. I don't know. It's gonna be pretty tough because we do draft with a bunch of my friends. But yeah, there's a bunch of value to be had here, and on the especially on the wide receiver side, tons and tons of value to be had. You don't have to go all in. I'll tell you what. I'm going all in on Justin Jefferson. I I'll say that right off the bat. I hope none of my friends see this. I will be going all in on Justin Jefferson. Matt is in my league, so I hate that I said that. I mean, he was probably, high on Justin Jefferson anyway, but Justin Jefferson's going to have the wide receiver one finish. I firmly believe that. Yes, Kirk Cousins is not very good, but he's done enough to be able to get Justin Jefferson back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons. So I'm very high on Justin Jefferson for sure. With that being said, Matt, I don't know if you have anything else.
I did also come across. I didn't bring him up before, but Robert Woods is also a sneaky ad late.
Yes,
He's
completely.
like wide receiver 40 something, and he's like the only guy in Tennessee that's like a legit wideout. Like honestly, like you have
100%.
Traylon Burks, but like the reports so far in camp were like not positive about
Okay.
Treylon Burks. And then they have like Westbrook Akina and like some guys like that are just like, yeah, they're not going to be taking many reps. So Robert Woods, that's kind of another guy you could just probably going to finish as a wide receiver too, but you get him at like wide receiver 4 or 5. So another guy
Yeah.
there. But that's probably all I got, man. We kind of give a lot of wide receivers though. Not as many running backs. Running backs a little bit tougher. That's why, like you were saying, like, go and get your Jeffersons and your Jamar Chases early, right? But if you don't get one of those very, very high end elite guys, you can just wait and just stack up on
100%.
guys that have a lot of potential and are probably going to finish as wide receiver 2s, and you draft them way later in the draft, and then you get a bunch of good running backs. Maybe you snag Travis Kelce, right? Like, so I think the strategy this year definitely lets you know, like, there's a lot of guys that are being slept on at wide receiver. So go and capitalize and get them late.
Yeah, 100%. And remember, a lot of, there's tons of breakout wide receivers every year. Last year, I had Debo Samuel and Cooper Kupp. You had Calvin Ridley before, Chris Godwin, Robert Woods at some point. Like, there's a ton of breakout wide receivers that happen to come across, every single year. So it is definitely a good strategy to stack up on your running backs and wait on your wide receivers. But really, I'm only waiting on wide receiver if I'm not getting, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase. Looking at the board, those are really going to be the only 3 guys that I'm gonna try for. Mike Evans is another guy for sure. Maybe Devontae, but outside of that, I don't think I'm gonna try and hammer wide receivers. So
I'd say
with that,
the only other guy I would add early on, probably CeeDee Lamb. But I got a
CD,
soft
I
spot
really
for CeeDee
like.
Lamb. I love CeeDee Lamb. He's
Yeah,
nasty.
I'm a big CD Lamb fan. I'm gonna operate as a wide receiver 1 this year. It's gonna be super fun to watch him because I think he's also gonna blow up. But with that being said, I think we're done here. So, thank you guys for tuning in. It was fun to talk Chargers and fantasy football. For me, Chargers fan, but for both of Matt and I, we do love fantasy football. We have a passion in it, and we every time we get together during fantasy season, we're talking about fantasy football, whether it's on a Padres podcast, whatever it is. So, very fun to be able to talk to you guys about it, and we'll talk to you guys soon.